We're here this morning with Senator Jack Hadge. How are you doing today?
Good, Stan.
And what would you like to talk about?
Well, I think most people are interested in the budget negotiations that are going on between the House Republicans and the Senate Democrats and the governor's office. But what most people don't hear is that there are several pieces of legislation that are being held up because all our attention is geared toward budget negotiations, and very little is being said about some other significant pieces of legislation that a lot of people have been working on for the past 4 months. One of them is mental health reform, and the second piece is the reorganization of the Department of Economic Development that is being proposed by the governor so that he can meet his pledge of creating 200,000 new jobs by the end of his first term. So let me start first with the reorganization of mental health. This has been a priority of the Republicans and Democrats for several years, and we now have an opportunity because the House Republicans had made it very clear that they wanted to do something substantial on reorganizing mental health services because we have inequity of services throughout the state. In some counties, it's a very comprehensive approach, like here in Polk County, but in other counties, very little is getting done, and a lot of services are not being provided. So this reorganization is based on eliminating the county-by-county service structure and going to a regional system that is statewide standards, regionally administered, but locally delivered. And that's that second part that's real important. We have a proposal that's gone through the Senate, and the House is now considering the final approval of it, and it creates a system in which counties create regions, and those regions then pool their money and are delivered based on statewide standards and core services. It still is created by the counties. They have a significant role in this new structure, and it will be provided by nonprofits and county services throughout the state. So we're going to equalize the services, we're going to standardize the core services, we're going to have, hopefully have enough money so that everybody who needs it can get services, whether or not you're on Medicaid or you're a private payer, or that you are just an individual needing help and need to go somewhere, and have people available to help you get through some of your difficult times. It's also very sophisticated so that with people with brain injury, it can be served in their communities by people that are qualified to do it. So the mental health reorganization is going to take the form of this new framework that I just described, where it's going to be statewide standards and core services, regionally administered, but locally delivered. And in order to get the meat on the bone of this skeleton plan, we're going to create a legislative committee over the summer and fall and work with the Department of Human Services, the Department of Health, and the Department of Education to create working groups of all the stakeholders, county representatives, providers, hospitals, doctors, and community activists and consumers to draft details to this plan. And it will go through the legislative committee, and the legislative committee will be drafting legislation to present to the legislature next year. And the reason this is important is because the House insisted and the Senate agreed, and the governor already signed legislation that eliminates the county-by-county mental health system that we have in place now by July 1st, 2013. That's 2 years from now. And they've already repealed the local property tax levy that goes to fund that system. So in 2 years, there will be no mental health system unless we create one, and we want to take our time in the next year and a half to 2 years to create a system where all Iowans will be able to receive services that meet their needs, that is affordable for everybody, and that can make a quality of life in Iowa better than it is today. So that's the first real piece of legislation that's being held up because of these budget talks. The second piece of legislation that's significant is the reorganization of the Department of Economic Development. This is the governor's plan in his attempt to create 200,000 new jobs in the state. That's a pretty bold approach. That's a pretty bold claim. He made it during his campaign. We certainly are going to keep him honest and try to get him to achieve that goal. But we also believe in the Senate, and even though we're Democrats, we believe that we should give the governor the tools he needs if he thinks he's going to actually accomplish that task. So he came in and asked for a reorganization of the Department of Economic Development. It turns out that one of the proposals that he had presented was the same proposal Democrats created back in 1991, 1992. Actually, I was the author of that. It was the creation of the Wallace Technology Transfer Foundation, where we created a private corporation that was going to be headed up by the Director of Economic Development as a separate corporation. He was going to be the president of the foundation. That was in force for about 4.5, 5 years. And it's the same model that the governor wanted and wants now. So the Democrats can embrace this articulation of his economic development group because we did it once before. The reason this should be more successful than 15 years ago is that the governor has really bought into this, and you have to have a gubernatorial leader to really make this model work, where you're going to have where you're going to try to identify private financing for the commercialization of new products. And we have at our universities and in our private labs dozens and dozens of opportunities of commercializing new ideas. And so this new corporation that's going to be formed will be in a better position to do that. And we agree, in the Senate Democrats, agree that commercializing private sector and university research is really a key for developing new jobs. So we expect that this will be passed, but again, this is sitting in limbo because of the budget talks. The one area where the governor is not cooperating is his insistence to cut the universities and the community colleges by $40 to $50 million. If you're going to have economic development and you're going to create new jobs, then we should have the ability to have a workforce that will be able to produce those products. The governor is being short-sighted. His strategy is not going to work unless he invests in community colleges and universities to create this workforce. He has a three-legged stool where only one leg is in place, and he's sawing off the ends of the other two legs by not funding community colleges at a level where they could assist in this creative economy of creating new jobs by having the workforce available for these new jobs. So we may have jobs available in companies that are going to be created, but we won't have the workforce to produce the jobs or produce the products. So it's really a catch-22 for the governor. And that leads me right into the budget talks, because the governor wants to cut state government more and more at a time in which we have $600 million in our reserve accounts. These are cash reserve accounts. And another $400 million in the ending balance of this fiscal year. And he wants to not use any of that money to provide the necessary services even for him to accomplish his job training goal. His employment goal of 200,000 new jobs. You have to invest in our educational system. And his insistence on cutting the regents and cutting community colleges does not add to a very good strategy. So even though we approve on one hand the reorganization of economic development, his insistence on not investing in the education for those new products is pretty short-sighted. On top of that, the budget negotiations are not going well. The insistence that the Democrats are walking away from the table is pure political poppycock. I'm ashamed that any politician would openly mislead the public on that kind of talk. We have been at the table from the very beginning. Our leaders, Senator Gronstal and Senator Dvorsky, the Appropriations Chair, and the President of the Senate, Jack Kibbe, have all been engaged in all of the meetings. Turns out that the governor hasn't attended all of the meetings, but his staff has. And so we really don't know where we are at any one time. They keep on changing their position. They keep on changing the standards of the negotiations. They keep on changing the dollar amount that we're trying to reach. Whether or not we have enough, whether or not our target for spending keeps on going down with the Republicans. Right now, they're $300 million below the amount that legally we have to reach in a 99% of a projected revenue budget statute that we created back in the early 90s as well. So he's being unreasonable, but more importantly, he's not telling the truth, and his people are misleading the public in all of the negotiations. The Democrats in the Senate are all behind our negotiators. As chair of the largest appropriations subcommittee, Health and Human Services, I am very much aware and involved with the negotiations on in my committee. I've met with my co-chairman, Representative Dave Heaton, for 2.5 hours the other week. We made some headway, but I have no idea whether or not that their leadership has at all embraced the negotiations that Representative Heaton and I have made. And so we're all in limbo. And so next week, the week of June 6th, we will have a series of budget committees, Senate budget committees, one a day for 5 days, outlining our proposal versus the Republicans' proposal and the governor's, and really identifying what will be lost if the governor's proposal wins out. All the services that will be in jeopardy, and we're seeing this across the country with firemen standing on the banks of a river, watching a man drown just yesterday in Southern California because they weren't trained to go in and rescue a person that's drowning. And immediately after the death of the citizen, the city manager reinstated the training, so firemen and police officers will now be trained into trying to rescue someone from drowning. I mean, this kind of tragedy could be avoided, but it's a tragedy that is being directly related to budget cuts. And in Iowa, we're better than that. We're better than having our budget cuts be so severe that people's lives will be in danger. But right now, I'm not so sure we're not acting just like the California politicians, where they're trying to protect their budgets so much that they let people die. That's not going to be something we're going to propose. That's not something we're going to at all stand still for. This budget fight is going to continue. But we're up against a Republican House and a Republican governor. They outnumber us 2 to 1, and we've been trying over and over again to find a budget solutions for early childhood education, for health care, for mental health, for economic development, the strategy of commercial property taxes that the governor wants. No economist has really endorsed that. Most economists have warned that it's probably too optimistic, the governor's projections, that more revenue will be coming in. That's called trickle-down economics. President Reagan tried that once. Didn't work then. Why would it work now? Then we have a property tax proposal that the Democrats submitted, and the Republicans don't like that. It doesn't give enough relief to the largest corporations. We've got to get beyond these political differences and come up something, because the people of the state want us to find common ground and to protect their interests, protect their public safety, protect our children, and have a place where we can grow. And we're participating in that in the Senate Democrats. Contrary to what you hear in the public, it's really angering us that we're being considered the obstructionists, when in reality we have been working all along continuously.